In the days before the graphing calculators, there had to be a method to solve any quadratic, whether it came out evenly or not. And there was, and it is called the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula will actually solve any quadratic by hand, or with a little bit of assistance from a calculator if you so choose. And you can just choose. You either memorize this formula, which will be on your formula sheet for EOC, and use this to solve them, or use the method I taught you in the calculator, and either one of those will solve any quadratic. So let's take a look how this works. So if you remember, that our quadratic formula is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? So these are the a, b, and the c in this formula. So all we do is we figure out what these are. So this one, a is 1, b is 8, and c is -7. And we just plug these values into our formula. So we have minus b plus and minus, which means we're going to do two formulas, square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. And then all you do is you solve this. Now my suggestion is that you solve this part first. But that's going to do two things for you. One, it's going to make it easier to just keep track of all this and you'll plug it in. But two, this number right here is called the determinant. And if this is greater than 1, we're going to have two zeros, which means that this thing is going to cross like this. If this thing is 0, we're going to have one answer, which means it's going to touch the y-axis, the x-axis. And if this thing is negative, you can't have the square root of a negative number. Remember I've been saying all year that we have real numbers and imaginary numbers. Square root of a negative number is an imaginary number, and we're not going to deal with those in Algebra 1. Those parabolas don't touch the x-axis and therefore have no real zeros. So what we'll do is we'll just solve this part first. So we'll just plug in the calculator. So we're going to go 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times -7. And that's 92. So we've simplified this a little bit. We're going to have -8 -8 plus and minus the square root of 92 over 2. Alright, so this we can solve. So we just have, just be careful, this part here, it's like it's in parentheses, otherwise it's going to solve wrong. So you go parentheses, -8 plus the square root of 92, close the parentheses, divided by 2. So one answer is 0.7, actually 0.80. And then the other one's going to be -8 minus square root of 92 over 2. So remember, we've got both of these on top of a fraction, so we've got to do these together. So minus 8 minus the square root of 92. Close our parentheses, divided by 2, and our other answer is negative 8.80. Okay, I know that seems like a lot of work. It might be just as easy, since you have the graphing calculator, and you will have it, to go put this in y equals. So you have x squared plus 8x minus 7. Graph it. Calculate. A 0. Need something way over here, so I'm going to say negative 10. Something here in the middle, so how about 0? And that gets our first one, negative 8.8. Then we do our second one. Calculate a 0. To the left bound, negative 1. Something to the right, I always like to use 10. And 0.80. So even though that seems like a lot of work, that's even more work. Even with the calculator, this is more work. You can actually go ahead and type this whole thing in and go negative 8 plus square root blah, 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 all over 2 times 1. And just type that all in and then do it all over again with the negative. But if you'll go ahead and solve this first, you can see if it has 2 zeros, if this is positive, 1 0, if this is 0, and no zeros or no solution if this is less than 1. So I'm going to work one more with the quadratic formula, and then you can decide if you want to do the rest of these with the calculator or with the quadratic formula. So here we go. So this is A. A is 3. B is 4. And C is 1. So our quadratic formula goes minus B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. Alright, so I'm going to simplify this real quick in the calculator. So I have 4 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. Can I get my 4? 4 times 3 times 1. And that's 4. And so this one comes out pretty evenly. So this is negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4. Well, what's the square root of 4? It's 2. Over 2 times 3 is 6. So I can finish this one out by hand pretty easily. But I'll just go ahead and put in the calculator. So it's, remember, I got to put the top of the fraction in parentheses. There's one answer, and then negative, oh, forgot my parentheses, negative 4 minus 2 divided by 6, and there is my other answer. So I have negative 0.333 repeating, which we know is negative 1/3, and negative 1. Or I can just plug this whole thing into y equals and use the other method to solve. Alright, this video is already long enough, so I think I'll leave it there.